this video, I'm gonna give you 3 things that I learned while going broke, starting a business and growing a business that I hope you do not do. So you do not go broke like I went broke. And I think it was 2018 or something like that. So when did this happen? Why did this happen? So from 2017 to 2022, I ran a fitness apparel company called 413 Apparel, and it went great from 2020 to 2022. But from 2017 to 2020, it was tough because I basically went broke where I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay my rent, right? So these are some lessons that I learned that if you're starting a business, make sure that you listen to them because it will save you a lot of time and energy and just frustration. Hold up, stop right there. If you have not subscribed to the channel, I'd really, really appreciate it. I'm trying to just grow this channel to give you just real, unfiltered conversations to help us grow. And that's it. Now, back to the video. Number 1, knowing COGS, your COGS, your cost of goods sold. It's one thing to make a lot of revenue. If you look on social media, people will say all the time, you'll see coaches be like, I can teach you how to make 10 grand a month. Okay, that's great. You can make 10 grand a month in revenue, but what is your profit? What is that going to cost you? How much money do you have to put into ad spend to get that? Are you putting in $8,000 to get that $10,000 where you have a profit of $2,000, but then you have to pay taxes on it and all of this other stuff? What does that cost you? And that's just that. I'm just saying that's like might just be ad spend. There's other things when it comes to costs, right? And what I'm doing now from a Rick Lane barbecue, if you follow me on there, if you know what I'm talking about, I have a barbecue company. I have a whiskey syrup and I have a new seasoning out, right? And so the seasoning is mixed of 7 different spices. And now there's 7 different spices, and then there is the container, there is the wrapping, there's the shipping, there's all of that creates this one seasoning. Now I know the cost, the itemized cost of every single spice, of the wrapping, of the shipping, of all of that, and then I have to price it accordingly. Because what I was doing for 413 was saying, well, this is the price of, a tank, and not even factoring in the shipping, not even factoring in all of the costs that it came into just creating that tank. And so what happened was we would have decent revenue the first 3 years, but I was looking at it and I was like, why are we in the red? Why are we in the negative? It's because our costs far exceeded what our actual price was and obviously what our profit was. So I've learned that and I was like, okay, wait a second. Let me just make sure that anytime I sell something and it ships out, there is at least a percentage that I'm comfortable with of a profit. Because if there's a percentage that I'm comfortable with of a profit, then I'm like, okay, cool. Now this is where we're at. Now I know, okay, if I want to increase ad spend, well, here's a percentage, but we're not going to eat into it where our cost is higher than our price, right? So make sure that you know your cost of goods sold and get very itemized with it. Number 2, scale appropriately. It's great to expand quickly, but when you expand really quickly, sometimes your costs skyrocket. And what you realize is, again, you're like, I'm getting a lot of revenue, but now I have more costs. When we did 413, we actually expanded really quick from 2019 to 2020. We expanded, probably like 10x, and it was crazy from a revenue standpoint. So it was like, okay, we had to hire more part-time people. We had to invest more into the brand and everything, but we scaled really, really quick. And so we scaled to our peak point, but then what happened was then the next few seasons, we didn't sell to where our peak was. And I was like, oh man, well, we over ordered. There was a few things that we did where I was like, oh crap, we really expanded too quickly. We didn't grow into where we were at. I was like way too optimistic. And although, we ended up doing pretty well, it was one of those things where in the moment I learned and I was like, okay, I have to make sure that we are expanding. Yes, you want to be, I'd say I'm somebody who likes to be a little bit aggressive, but you want to be as aggressive as what's comfortable to you while making sure that you are expanding appropriately. That is, and what is expansion? It might be you're trying to offer too many things too fast, right? For Rick Lane Barbecue, I'm like, hey, we have 2 things. We have a syrup and we have a rub out. Those things, I am going to try to make sure that we get that out there, that we sell. We'll do those great. And then we'll add another seasoning or add another rub. And it's not like, oh, we're just going to add a line of 7 things. And then it just waters down everything where it's like somebody might order this over here and order this over here. But now we have stocked 7 things that it's just like, they're just sitting on the shelves, right? Let's do 1 or 2 things proficiently and then slowly increase from there, right? And then slowly grow. If slow growth is steady growth, and steady growth is growth that is very, very thought through versus just being like, oh, you have some anomaly where something hits and you're like, okay, now we're at this level. No, see if you can repeat that. If you can repeat that over time, then that's when you increase a little bit. And then the last thing is, look, I am all for hustle culture. I am all for entrepreneurship culture. I am an entrepreneur like through and through, by like in my heart and the depths of my soul. But I say this, do not neglect a full-time job because you will typically have full-time bills. I realized that when I left the full-time job and then my bills kept coming, and what I was making from fitness coaching, what I was making from fitness apparel, it was not always keeping up. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting, because I used to very much, for lack of better words, like poo-poo on a full-time job, because I was like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. This is what I do. This is a business that I'm going to grow for me. And it was my ego that was really, really in it, instead of just sitting back and saying, wait a second, you can have a full-time job and then grow this thing. And yes, it might take a little bit more energy and take a little bit more time, but what it does is it keeps the stress level down. Because when you're an entrepreneur and you're just doing something and you're bootstrapping it yourself and you're going all in, that's a great thing to do, because you're going to bring the most amazing and creative person out of you. I've done it. I've been there. I understand that. That is so true. But what you also do is you have a different level of stress that I have never experienced until I did that. And I was like, wait, for me, I like to have a little bit of stress in that area, because I need to be pushed. I need to feel like, oh, okay, I gotta do this. But I don't want to have too much to the point where I'm sitting back and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to afford my rent. I don't know if I'm going to afford food. Those things are different levels of stress, because now you're not even worried about the business. You're just trying to focus on your basic needs. That's why I say don't neglect a full-time job. And your full-time job, if it's something that's too demanding and you're like, oh, I really, really love this entrepreneurship thing and I want to, then maybe you do a job that's a little less demanding. It might pay a little less, but it's a little less demanding. You have more of a mental capacity to do the things that you need to do. For me right now, the reason why where I'm at, like I really, we've been afforded to be able to work from home. That is a top priority for me right now, because I'm like, I could not do Rick Lane Barbecue or some other things if I had to go into an office every day, right? Because that might be 2 additional hours that are spent in commute. And then now with a baby on the way, it's like, okay, now we really can't do any of these things, where I'm like, yeah, family is the biggest priority, but it's like I want us to have a little time to be able to do some things that I want to do, right? And so again, having a full-time job that doesn't take away too much of your time, but it's something where you're comfortable with, that can take care of what's needed. I've always said this: do what you need to do so you can do what you want to do. This is the do what you need to do so that you want to do your entrepreneurship venture. If you do that, you will be so freed up mentally if you have something that's taking care of the things that you need to take care of. So I hope that this helps. These are things that I have learned, that I have lived through, that I've cried through, that I have bled through. Again, understand and know your COGS, your COGS, your cost of goods sold. Understand, know what those are. Number 2, scale appropriately. Don't want to scale too fast. Scale at a rate that works well, and just, but you want to scale. But scale at a rate that works well. And number 3, don't neglect a full-time job. I'm not going to be one of those people to say, hey, quit your full-time job or whatever. I think I probably used to be that, but now being 34 and not 22 or 23, 24, I'm looking at life and I'm looking at, when you have a house, you have kids, you have, things that you want to do, you have a lifestyle that you want to uphold. Sometimes it's not the best thing to do. Sometimes the best thing to do is make sure you have a full-time job and make sure you have time to do the things that you want to do. Time is going to be your biggest resource. If you have some time to do the things that you want to do, over time, that thing can grow to a point where you're comfortable being like, oh, I can do this. It takes care of my needs, right? So I hope that this message helped the lessons that I learned going broke. I'm just going to give them to you, but that's it. Thank you. See you in the next video. Peace.